And of course the Russians are backing their diplomacy with force by sending arms to Syria, to their ally Bashar al-Assad.
Exactly. I think you know, if we're serious about diplomacy, we have to do diplomacy right. If this is an exercise in public relations to tell the Arab world that, okay, you know, we did convene a conference, and look, the Russians undermined it and Assad showed bad faith, well then, you know, this is sufficient. But, you know, we've done this sort of diplomacy before. We did it in the Balkans. You know, you have to convince the other side that the alternative to diplomacy is risky to them and is costly to them. And that only happens if they take the military pressure they face on the ground seriously.
Certainly the United States called Russia's bluff to some extent in the UN Security Council. The Russians were shown to have vetoed resolutions, but here we are again trying to engage the Russians.
Right, but I think we also hid behind the Russian veto. And we were too happy for the Russians to veto it, and then for us to say, well, there's no other way forward. And the answer to the veto would have been for us to work to undo the veto, which meant intensive pressure and negotiation with the Russians, but also to explore ways of going around the Russians. I mean, if you give the Russians that kind of a symbolic veto over the entire resolution of the conflict, they will exercise it. You have to find ways to also make Russia understand that if they don't play ball, they could be sidelined. Then they're much more likely to want to be part of the winning team. And we haven't explored much of those things.